The home of the common Joe and the common Sally in the know, even more so than all those media talking heads. As you can see, we got the Magic Merlin hat on today because we're going to have a magic show today, class, in honor of Dan Lanning, who keeps making all those USC recruits disappear and magically reappear as Oregon Ducks, even to the chagrin of the great crystal baller Wilt Fong. Let's talk about it. Abracadabra. I'm going to reach out. You ain't going to reach out and grab anything, Lincoln Riley. It seems like, especially on the defensive side of the ball, as it seems Danny Lanning once again has performed his magic trick. And in honor of the Skittle shitters out there, I'm drinking our C4 Skittle flavored drink as Dan Lanning continues to take their Skittles. And this topic today was brought to me by one of those common Joes and Sallies in the know. Once again, put me in the know. That's right, our loyal listener and supporter, Killer Breeze, a.k.a. George Contupis. That's right. Appreciate the hell out of this topic, George. Now, getting right to it here. This is the OCF. That stands for the Outlaw of College Football. Also on Twitter at OCF Productions. And you can also contact me on Facebook under Jesse Paul Clark, spelled Jessc without the I. Now, getting right to it here. Got some notes here. Seems like Dan Lanning once again is going in there and taking Lincoln Riley's defensive lunch money. Him and Alex Grinch. They're smelling a huge stench. And that stench is the fact that Oregon is just taking their shit. They just keep taking it, man. Now they have taken a guy, 2024, it says here, Fortney, Texas 4-star safety Aaron Flowers, committed to Dan Lanning over USC, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Arkansas. Now, those are pretty big names in college football, but the one that really stands out once again is USC. Once again, USC is striking out on defensive players left and right. Not only are they striking out on defensive players, but they're allowing one of their soon-to-be former Pac-12 cohorts to come in and take it. And this time it ain't just the state of California. So I guess USC figures, we'll go to Texas and try to get some recruits since Oregon owns our own state. Wrong answer. Because Oregon and Dan Lanning have not only flipped this guy from USC, but this guy was crystal balled by Wilt Fong. I think his first name's Steve. He's a big recruiting guru that usually gets I think it's like 91 to 92% of his predictions right. So to flip this guy, that's pretty epic. And it says here, looking back at the notes, this guy named Chris Hampton, he's a former defensive coordinator at Tulane, is fastly becoming considered a great. In this article, Aaron Flowers alludes to the fact that the reason why he chose Dan Lanning and Chris Hampton over all the other teams that had recruited him was their personal connection. And the fact that he went out of his way to make a personal connection, that they both contacted him through FaceTime, in which he said most head coaches didn't want to do that. And also, they would sit down and actually talk with his father quite a few times. And that's a personal connection that a lot of players really like. If they think that you're not patronizing, that you're being genuine, and that you really are making them a priority, them and their family, then you're probably going to land quite a few recruits. And so far, Dan Lanning and Chris Hampton are doing a very good job, according to this guy. He was the number 10 safety in the nation, it says, and number 24 overall in Texas. So this wasn't some run-of-the-mill 4-star athlete. This was a guy that was probably coveted by just about everybody, not just in the state of Texas, but in the nation, as you can see by the schools that had recruiting that he turned down. It says Oregon continues to flourish in two of the biggest states, California and Texas. especially after their 2023 class where they got Ashton Porter, an edge rusher, safety Tyler Turner, and wide receiver Ashton Cozart. All these were 4- and 5-star players. The last one really sticks out because it's a wide receiver. And why does that stick out? Because he's an offensive player. This guy and these guys are defensive coaches. They were defensive coordinators in their coaching careers, and yet they're able to get both offensive and defensive players. And that, to me, is something that the skittle shooters out there in L.A. that keep crying every day about how I've seen a few podcasts talking about how they say that USC is going to be the #1 team in Pac-12 recruiting. Not sure where they're getting that from. I mean, I guess there's so many sources out there that eventually you could be ranked #1 in one of them. But what they need to worry about going forward is not just Oregon owning their ass in their own state and probably the conference, according to what rankings you're looking at. But they need to worry about how they compare to Big Ten schools, because comparing yourself to the Pac-12 schools right now is pretty hollow, considering that in another year you'll be in the Big Ten. What you need to do is compare your classes to Ohio State and Michigan. Now, you might be ranked ahead of Ohio State and Michigan. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the rankings for them. But Ohio State is the one you really need to be worried about instead of Oregon. But now you have Oregon continuing to take recruits, even with all this news about the demise of the Pac-12, which is a big surprise to me. So that in itself lets you know exactly one of the reasons why USC is joining the Big Ten. They think if they join the Big Ten, they'll have this premier label as compared to Oregon, because the Pac-12 label is not going to be as prominent once USC and UCLA leave. And that, to me, is a little cowardly, in my opinion, because what's happening here, and I've heard it from numerous sources, can't really prove it, but it seems as though USC does not want the Big Ten to invite Oregon or Washington to the Big Ten. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is what we just talked about. Oregon is owning California and owning USC in recruiting when it comes down to the latter part of the cycle and the recruiting cycle. Right now, USC may be ranked ahead of them, but they're probably not going to finish ranked ahead of them in any service. So going forward, I think USC needs to really think about how they're being perceived. To me, what it looks like is that you don't want to be in the Pac-12 anymore because you're having problems recruiting against Oregon, who's not even in your state. So what I think USC needs to do in their fans is they need to get with their administration and tell them, hey, y'all quit trying to keep Oregon and Washington from getting in the Big Ten, because it's making us look bad, man. It makes us look like we can't recruit against them without having some kind of edge or some kind of premier label to get us over the hump. What they need to do is invite Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten. And then let's see if USC can right the ship, if Lincoln Riley can turn the corner, especially when it comes to defensive recruits. And I know the USC fans out there think I'm trolling and whatnot, but the skittle shitters need to get their ducks in a row. No pun intended. Well, maybe there was. But you need to get your ducks in a row, man, and start recruiting defensive players on a higher level. Yeah, you can finish between 10th and 20th in recruiting, but if you're loaded up with offensive players, you're never going to get past that glass ceiling of 11-3, which is what you were last year. That's what Lincoln Riley does, man. He finishes anywhere from 9 to 10 to 11 wins, 12 wins maybe. Made the playoffs with Oklahoma. But you're not going to make the playoffs and you're not going to win a national championship if you don't start getting at least a few more 4 or 5 star defensive players. You're going to continue doing what you did last year, and that's being the runner-up in the Cotton Bowl to Tulane. And that's all I got to say about that. There's a little heart down here. If you don't mind, hit that. Throw me a few dollars in the coffers. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel, The Big Four. And as always, KMCA to all the other teams. Class is now officially dismissed.